The room fell silent as the CEO of the company looked down at the man standing before him. His tone dripped with arrogance as he sneered, "You think you can talk to me like that? You're lucky you're even here." The man didn't flinch. His face remained calm, but his eyes told a different story. The CEO smirked, feeling confident. He was about to put this man in his place. But what happened next? It would change everything and leave the CEO speechless. The office of CEO Marcus Hawthorne was a symbol of power. Sleek glass walls, a polished mahogany desk, and a breathtaking view of the city. It was the kind of office that made people nervous just by stepping into it. Today, however, the usual air of prestige felt like a facade. Inside, there was tension. Jason Bennett, an unassuming man with a quiet demeanor, stood in front of the desk, his hands folded. He had worked in this company for nearly a decade, and he had never been treated like this before. Marcus Hawthorne, on the other hand, was perched behind his desk, his legs crossed, a smug smile on his face. "You know, Jason," Marcus began, his voice dripping with condescension. "You've been in this company long enough to know your place. People like you always think they deserve more, but the truth is, you're lucky to even have a job here. You should be grateful." Jason's eyes remained locked on the CEO, his expression calm but resolute. The room was tense as Marcus continued to speak, insulting him for not playing by the rules, and constantly challenging his authority. Jason had heard enough over the years, but today was different. "You really think you can talk to me like that?" Marcus scoffed, leaning forward. "You're lucky you're even here. Do you really believe you can change things around here?" Jason didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and slowly pulled out an envelope. His actions were deliberate, steady, and it caused Marcus to raise an eyebrow. "What's this? Some kind of pathetic excuse for a resignation letter?" Marcus chuckled. "If that's the case, you can just leave. I don't need people like you in this company." Jason shook his head slowly. "No, Marcus, it's not a resignation letter. It's a document that might change your life." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, laughing to himself. "I'm the CEO of this company. You think you have something that can change anything here?" Jason calmly slid the envelope across the desk. "Why don't you read it for yourself?" Marcus, trying to maintain his composure, grabbed the envelope and tore it open. His eyes scanned the letter inside, and as he read, his expression began to change. The smugness faded from his face, replaced by a growing sense of confusion. He reread the letter twice, and his jaw clenched. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath, his fingers trembling slightly. Jason remained quiet, watching as Marcus processed the information. The CEO finally looked up, his confidence slipping. This can't be right," he stammered, looking at the document again, his voice faltering. Jason's calm voice broke the silence. "I'm the owner of the company, Marcus, the real owner." Marcus stared at Jason, unable to process the words he had just heard. His face drained of color, the arrogant smirk completely vanishing. The air in the room felt colder, more suffocating as Jason stood there, unwavering. "What do you mean, the owner?" Marcus's voice was shaky now, his usual confidence completely shattered. "That's impossible. You're an employee, a low-level worker. You can't own this company." Jason didn't flinch. "I've been the owner of this company for years, Marcus. You've been running it, but I've been watching. I've allowed you to make decisions, thinking that you'd act in the best interests of the company. But clearly, that's not the case." Marcus blinked, trying to regain control of the situation, but his mind was racing. He stood up abruptly, walking to the window to compose himself, as if the view outside could give him the answers he needed. "You're lying. This is some sort of prank. Who are you, really?" He turned back to face Jason, his hands trembling. "This is insane." Jason took a step closer to the desk, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "I'm the one who funded this company when it was just an idea, Marcus. I provided the capital, I built the foundation. But I let you take the reins, thinking that you could handle the pressure. But instead, you've been running this place into the ground, mismanaging resources and treating people like dirt. I've seen enough." Marcus's face twisted in disbelief. "You're not serious, are you? You can't just come in here and throw this in my face. I've worked for years to get where I am. This company is mine now. I own it. You're just some faceless guy who threw money into it and disappeared." Jason let out a soft chuckle, his voice calm but with a hint of firmness. "It's time you learned the truth. I'm not faceless, Marcus, and I haven't disappeared. I've been right here, watching you run this company into the ground. I was waiting for the right time." Marcus, now visibly agitated, reached for his phone on the desk, trying to dial someone, anyone who could help him make sense of this situation. But Jason moved quickly, snatching the phone away before Marcus could make the call. "Who are you going to call? The board? The investors?" "I am the board, Marcus," Jason said, his voice gaining strength. "You've been working for me all this time. You were just a puppet in my game." Marcus's face flushed with anger, but there was something else in his eyes now, fear. Fear of the truth. "No one is going to believe you. They'll never believe you over me," he spat, struggling to maintain his composure. Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're wrong, Marcus. I have the proof. Everything's documented. You think you've been calling the shots, but the truth is, you've been a hired hand this whole time." Jason pulled out a small, official-looking document from his jacket. "This is the deed. It's all here." Marcus staggered back, his face turning pale as he read the document Jason handed him. The realization hit him hard. He dropped the paper as if it had burned his hands. "No," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "This can't be real." Jason nodded. "It's real, Marcus. I've been the silent owner this whole time, but now it's time for you to go." The room was silent, the weight of Jason's words hanging in the air. Marcus stood frozen, his eyes darting between the deed and Jason, his mind scrambling to make sense of what was happening. His world, the empire he'd built on arrogance and manipulation, was crumbling around him. Jason, however, stood with a calm confidence, his posture relaxed. The shift in power was undeniable. Where Marcus had once commanded the room with arrogance, Jason now commanded it with quiet authority. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus finally stammered, his voice shaking. He had no idea how to handle this situation, how to regain control. His years of manipulation and power games suddenly seemed worthless. Jason's gaze never wavered as he watched Marcus struggle. "What am I going to do? I'm going to fix what you've broken," he replied, his voice steady and firm. "I'm going to ensure that this company runs the way it should, ethically, fairly. No more exploitation. No more treating employees like pawns." Marcus's eyes widened. "You can't do that. You don't understand how this place works. You don't know what it takes to—" Jason interrupted him, his voice cold. "I know more than you think, Marcus. I've been watching you for a long time. I've seen your mistakes, your greed, and now it's time to fix it." Marcus looked around the room as if searching for someone to help him, but all the employees who had once feared him now stood silently, waiting for what would happen next. Jason's presence in the room was like a weight lifted off their shoulders, and no one stepped in to defend Marcus. "Please," Marcus begged, his voice pleading now. "You can't just take everything from me. I worked for this. This company is mine. You can't just—" Jason stepped forward, his voice cutting through Marcus's rambling. "No, Marcus, this company isn't yours. It never was." He turned to the employees in the room, giving them a look that commanded respect. "This company belongs to the people who made it great. Employees, investors, the people who've dedicated their time to making it succeed, and they deserve better than you." The weight of Jason's words hit Marcus like a slap to the face. The realization that his empire was slipping through his fingers brought a surge of panic. I built this," Marcus protested weakly. "I brought it to where it is. I did this." Jason's eyes narrowed. "No, Marcus, you used it. You took credit for other people's work. And now it's time to make sure that the people who really built this place have a say in how it's run." Marcus sank into his chair, defeated. His body slumped. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a sense of helplessness. He had been exposed, and there was no coming back from it. Marcus sat back in his chair, staring blankly at the desk in front of him, the weight of his reality sinking in. The once confident CEO now looked like a man who had lost everything: his power, his reputation, his control. The employees who had once feared him now stood in silence, the shift in the room palpable. Jason's calm, measured words had left no room for rebuttal. He didn't need to shout or make threats. His very presence had rendered Marcus powerless. And now, it was time to seal the deal. "I'm not going to fire you, Marcus," Jason said, his voice steady. "That's not how I operate. But you're no longer running this company. Effective immediately, I'm taking over as CEO." Marcus's eyes flashed with anger, but the fire had dimmed. He could feel the power slipping away from his grasp. "You can't do that. I'll fight you. I'll call the board." Jason raised a hand to stop him. "I don't need the board, Marcus. I own this company. I've been the owner from the beginning, and now I'm going to make sure this place runs with integrity." The room was still, the weight of Jason's words settling over everyone like a thick fog. The employees exchanged glances, unsure of what to do next. Many of them had been waiting for this moment, silently hoping that someone would finally come in and take control of the chaos Marcus had created. "Effective immediately," Jason continued, his eyes cold and unyielding. "All of your decisions are null and void. You'll be removed from any executive role. You'll have no say in how this company operates from here on out." Marcus's face twisted in disbelief. "You can't just erase everything I've done. I built this company." Jason stepped closer to the desk, his voice low but firm. "You didn't build it. You took credit for it. You exploited people. You used your position to destroy lives, manipulate employees, and keep the system in your favor. But that ends now." The room was silent again. Marcus tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. There was nothing left for him to say. Jason turned to the employees, his voice softer now, but still commanding. "From this moment on, things change. I will make sure this company becomes what it was meant to be. A place where people are valued for their work, not their fear. A place where integrity matters." As he spoke, Marcus slumped further into his chair, completely defeated. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a man who had been outsmarted and outplayed. Jason had done what Marcus never expected. He had stripped him of his power, not with force but with truth. Jason stood tall, looking down at Marcus one last time. There was no satisfaction in his eyes, no smirk of victory. Just a calm, unwavering certainty. He had done what needed to be done, and now it was time for the company to move forward. Marcus, on the other hand, looked like a man who had been defeated in every sense. His face was pale, his hands trembling as they gripped the armrests of his chair. He could barely make eye contact with anyone. His empire, built on lies and manipulation, had come crashing down, and he couldn't even argue his way out of it. I'm still the CEO, Marcus whispered, almost pleading, trying to hold on to the last shred of his authority. Jason shook his head. No, Marcus, the title doesn't matter. It's about how you lead people. It's about integrity, and you failed. The room was still. No one spoke, and no one moved. The employees in the room were watching, some with curiosity, some with respect, and others with a sense of awe at the way Jason had handled the situation. But there was no time to waste. The company had been suffering for too long, and now Jason had a responsibility to make it right. I'm putting together a new leadership team, Jason continued, one that understands the true meaning of responsibility. You will not be a part of it. Marcus finally stood up, his face flushed with anger. You can't do this. I built this company. I deserve respect. Jason didn't react, his gaze unflinching. You had respect, Marcus, but you lost it when you lost sight of what really matters. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, and you haven't earned it. With that, Jason turned his back on the former CEO and walked toward the door. As he stepped out of the office, he could feel the weight of the moment. He had just changed the course of this company's history. And while Marcus's downfall was dramatic, it wasn't about revenge. It was about bringing the company back to its roots, where fairness, respect, and integrity mattered more than power. The employees who had been in the room followed Jason, silently watching as the old regime crumbled. No one said a word as they left the office, but a few exchanged glances, some with admiration, others with a renewed sense of hope. Outside the office, Jason made his way down the hallway. He had a lot of work to do, and he knew that the journey ahead would be tough. But today was a victory for everyone who had been overlooked, mistreated, or held back by the very system that was supposed to support them. The news of Marcus Hawthorne's downfall spread quickly throughout the company. Within hours, Jason had called an emergency meeting. Employees, many of whom had lived under the shadow of Marcus's leadership, gathered in the main conference room, unsure of what to expect. Whispers filled the room as they waited for Jason to speak. As Jason walked in, the room fell silent. His presence commanded attention, but it was his calm demeanor that made people sit up straighter. No longer just the quiet worker in the back, Jason had transformed into the leader this company had desperately needed. He stood at the podium, looking out over the faces of the employees who were all waiting for his words. Jason cleared his throat and began. I know many of you have worked under a system that valued power over integrity, fear over respect. Under Marcus Hawthorne's leadership, this company was driven by personal agendas rather than what was best for the employees in the business. That ends today. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. For the first time in years, employees felt like they had a voice again. They had seen Marcus's arrogance and the way he treated them, and now they were finally hearing the change they'd hoped for. Jason continued, Effective immediately, we're restructuring. The leadership will now be based on transparency, collaboration, and most importantly, fairness. I've already begun selecting the new management team, people who will work with you, not above you. People who understand that a company's strength is built on the strength of its people. A round of applause erupted from the employees, but Jason raised his hand to quiet them. This isn't just about new leadership. This is about all of us working together to create a culture that values every single one of you. No one here is just a number or a cog in the machine. You matter. Your work matters. The room was electric with energy. For the first time in a long while, the employees felt seen, heard, and respected. Jason's words were not just a promise, they were a commitment to real change. I know there's a lot of work to do, and there will be challenges ahead, but I promise you this: we will do things the right way. Together, we will rebuild this company on a foundation of integrity, trust, and respect. If you're with me, we'll make this place something we can all be proud of." The room erupted into applause, and this time Jason smiled. He didn't need to say another word. His actions spoke louder than anything he could have said. He had already begun to change the company, and the employees were ready to follow him. As the meeting ended, Jason looked around at the faces of the employees, faces that had been beaten down by years of poor leadership but were now filled with hope. It was a small step, but it was the beginning of something big. The days following the meeting were filled with a whirlwind of activity. Jason wasted no time in meeting with the new management team, reviewing past decisions and addressing the countless issues that had plagued the company under Marcus's leadership. He worked tirelessly, driven by the vision of transforming the company into something that everyone, employees and clients alike, could be proud of. As he sat in his office one afternoon, reviewing a report, Jason couldn't help but think back to that pivotal moment when he had revealed himself as the true owner. Marcus's stunned face had been a moment he would never forget, but the real victory wasn't just in exposing the CEO's weaknesses. It was in the power shift that followed. The real work was now ahead of him. Despite the challenges, Jason felt a sense of optimism he hadn't felt in years. The employees were energized, motivated, and eager to rebuild. But he knew this transformation wouldn't happen overnight. The damage done by years of mismanagement would take time to undo. As he walked through the halls, he saw the change firsthand. Employees were talking to each other, collaborating, and working together with a level of engagement that had been missing for far too long. There was an air of hope, of possibility in the building. People were smiling, sharing ideas, and taking pride in their work again. It was the culture he had always wanted to create, and now it was becoming a reality. One afternoon, as Jason sat in a meeting with the new management team, a young woman, one of the junior employees, came in, hesitating at the door. She had been with the company for several years, always working hard but never in the spotlight. Today, though, she had something to say. "Mr. Johnson," she said, looking a bit nervous but determined, "I just wanted to thank you for what you did, for everything." Jason looked up, his face calm. "What do you mean?" She took a step forward, her voice more confident now. "For giving us a chance, for making us feel like we matter. Under the old leadership, we were always afraid to speak up, afraid to be heard, but now we feel like we have a voice, like we matter." Jason smiled, his eyes softening. "You always mattered," he said. "I just had to make sure you knew it." As she left the room, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was the impact he had wanted to make all along, not just in turning the company around, but in giving people the opportunity to thrive. Later that day, as he walked to his office, he passed a group of employees gathered around a table, deep in conversation. They were discussing ways to improve the company's operations, brainstorming ideas with enthusiasm and a sense of ownership. It was a small moment, but for Jason it was everything. The company was changing, not just in structure but in spirit. The shift from fear and manipulation to collaboration and respect was the foundation for the future. As the months passed, the company began to flourish. The culture of integrity Jason had worked so hard to instill took root. Employee morale improved, turnover dropped, and productivity soared. The company's clients noticed the change, and word spread that this was a place where people were treated with dignity and fairness. Jason never sought the spotlight. He knew the real change wasn't about one person. It was about the collective effort of everyone in the company. And as the company grew and succeeded, Jason's confidence only grew stronger. He had done more than just outsmart a corrupt CEO. He had built something lasting, something worth fighting for. The company, once controlled by greed and arrogance, was now a place where integrity, transparency, and respect defined everything they did. Jason had changed the company from the inside out, and now it was thriving. The future was bright, and Jason knew that this was just the beginning. The change he had started would continue to ripple outward, creating a company that would stand as a beacon of fairness and integrity for years to come.